Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammy and Nathan Yeager. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about marrying and divorcing young, travelling and moving overseas after a divorce, developing an identity outside of your career, and understanding personal values to truly designing a fueled up life. But before we dive into that, what's been fueling you up this week, Sammy?
I had lots of quality time with some girlfriends over the weekend. I actually had a sleepover where two of my girlfriends visited from South Australia for a third girlfriend's baby shower, a celebration of the creation of life. But it was really nice to have some time together. We went to the full other end of the spectrum and then went out dancing. So it was very wholesome and then not so much.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but it really fueled me up. It was really fun. What about you, Nath? What fueled you up this week?
My fuel up was almost exactly the same. I had a mate come and visit me from Perth who I haven't seen for 6 or 8 months or something since December last year. So it was really nice to hang out with him, have some really good quality time, talk shit, but also have some really nice conversations and go to a gig as well on Saturday night. So yeah, just spending some really good time with him, catching up and enjoying each other's company.
Yeah, it was kind of cool that the guys' weekend and the girls' weekend fell on the same weekend.
Yeah, they did.
You got to have a little staycation. The girls booted you out of our apartment.
I was fine with it.
No, hardly booted. You offered. You were like, let me get out of here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, it was a great weekend.
There's these kind of moments in time where we're both spending time with our friends and our own personal relationships. Just really reminds me how much better life is when you've got good people in your life, in your corner to share it with and celebrate or commiserate what's going on in your world. The quality of our relationships really does impact the quality of our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, let's dive into this week's ep.
Today we've got Kelsey Marshall joining us. She's a wedding photographer who is in the middle of her psychology degree. Her career pivot was inspired by her own life experiences and a desire to better understand herself and connect with others. Welcome to the show, Kelsey.
Thank you for having me. This is pretty cool.
Yes, it is very cool. And I feel like I've been bugging you to do this almost since we launched the show. So it's taken 3 years, but here you are. So I think for some context, we met in Nathan and I's first year of marriage.
Yeah, it was soon after we got married. So 2013, I think.
Yeah. So Kelsey had been gifted to us as an engagement photo shoot, which we did well and truly after our engagement and in our first year of marriage. And then we've had the great pleasure of being shot by you a couple of times since then. And you came out of semi-retirement to shoot our 10th wedding anniversary big bash last year, which we are so grateful for. Yeah. So thank you for being part of our love story and thank you for coming on the show to share a little bit about your love stories, plural. I'm really excited to dig in.
Me too. Yay!
All right. So I think we go way back to the beginning because what your bio didn't say is that you've actually been married before but not currently.
Yes, this is correct. So let's start off with my current age. I'm 30. So let's rewind back to when I was 18. Actually, a little bit before that.
Just an adult.
Yep, just an adult. So I got married at 18, engaged at 17. It's quite interesting sporting an engagement ring in your final year of high school. And it's sort of around that time where social media, like Facebook, was kind of becoming a thing. Everyone in school had it. And so that whole change your relationship status to engage drew a lot of attention. A lot of people in my year level had me at the topic of conversation, as, you know, makes sense. It's a bit of a juicy topic. But, yeah, I grew up going to youth groups and sort of Christian camps. So there was almost like a sort of that lifestyle inflicted on you in a way, sort of that white picket fence mentality. Obviously not practicing sex before marriage. That was sort of the value that we held, which is a core value in Christianity. So we sort of carried that on, which led us to dating for 9 months and then getting engaged after that, and then getting married 9 months after that.
Wow.
What a whirlwind.
Yeah.
So were your parents on board with this whole idea?
My parents have always been supportive. They're the type that won't really interfere with your decision making. They sort of let you learn along the way. So obviously after our divorce a few years later, I learned a lot more about how my parents felt at the time, and they just felt, it's your life. You need to make decisions for yourself. So learning that my dad had regrets of like thinking he should have said something, he should have put his foot down, he should have, delved that little bit further in and sort of asked questions. But, they were really supportive, and it was just the fantasy love bubble that we were in. Hindsight, actually, I think it was more the idea of being married and thinking that's what you had to do, okay, finish high school, let's get married, let's, start a career. Like I went straight into studying photography. And it was actually my own wedding that got me into weddings. I just loved the whole thing, and I started living vicariously through everyone else once I had my own wedding, just rocking up to everyone else's and photographing it and being a part of it. Obviously, it was not ideal getting divorced or even entering a relationship where you ended up just being housemates. And that's what it was. Like, lovely person, nothing against them. We just were not the right match.
Yeah.
Were you the same age, Kelsey?
We had 3 years between us. So he was 21 at the time we got married. I was 18. So both of our families were really supportive. His side of the family had similar values as well. So we were very supported by our families, and we're just, your average little Christian couple who wanted to get married because we felt that was the next thing you had to do.
And you probably wanted to have sex.
Absolutely. I'll let you in on this. This is so cringy in hindsight. But he was really strong in not wanting to kiss before we were married.
What?
So
Wow.
our first kiss was in front of everyone, and it was so bad.
This is like full Christian purity.
Absolutely. I wanted to jump the guy, obviously. It's like, can we at least kiss? Like, please. But he said, I want to, keep my thoughts pure and to, keep this until our wedding day, which when you're 18, you're like, okay, sure. Like, I'm already, I call myself a people pleaser. So especially at that age as well, you're like, okay, sure, no worries. That's fine. I understand that and respect that. But, deep down, of course, you want to, kiss the person and all that. So,
Did you have friends that were not Christian? Or were you at a Christian school, your whole community Christian, and that was just the normal?
So I went to a public school, just your stock standard public school. So did he. We grew up going to sort of church camps. So we had, heavy friendship groups and influence in that. Beyond that, I have a very diverse range of friends at that time.
So you probably did have other friends that were sleeping together, kissing, hooking up at parties.
Yeah.
Probably not getting engaged.
Yeah. It was a real mixed bag. So his friendship circle was just that circle. So I was limited to sort of that Christian environment, that influence, whereas I had a diverse range of friends. So I had that circle as well as my other circles in different areas of life, like from other interests and all that. So it was a real mixed bag. It was quite eye-opening for the people who didn't understand Christianity, thinking what the heck, what, you're 18. I'm trying to figure out what tree I slept under after a big night out with my friends versus, trying to figure out your life partner, which is what I was doing, or what I thought I was doing.
Yep. So how far was it into your relationship then, or into your marriage at that point, that you started realizing that maybe this isn't my forever person?
Oh, geez, I'm letting everything out today. So to be honest, I remember distinctly walking down the aisle, well, actually rewinding, the day before doing the little practice run. Dad was walking me down the aisle and I started crying after my sister who walked before me started crying. She was a bridesmaid. So it was a chain reaction. Everyone's tearing up. So I had a little cry the day before during our rehearsal. And so the next day, the doors opened to the church and I sort of tear up a little bit. And my dad turns to me and says, okay, this time it's it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that I was bawling my eyes out walking down the aisle, not wanting to get married.
And everyone would have thought it was just because you were really wrapped up in the emotion of the day.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I kept that to myself for at least a year. And I was just like, you know what? Our families had invested financially and emotionally into our relationship and our marriage. We had set the expectation to everyone that was there, and there were like at least 360 people in that church.
Whoa. That this is for forever. You set up a pretty strong social contract with a lot of people.
We had so many people come just to watch and be a part of it, and also probably because it's a spectacle seeing pretty much two kids get married. It's interesting reflecting back on that, like how long I denied that reality to myself. And I thought I made my bed, I made my decision. Every now and again, leading up to the wedding, I'd catch up with family friends, and a friend that I've grown up with since kindergarten, her mum said, and she's Italian, so they're like so happy just to speak their mind. I love that about her mum. She's like, are you sure? Like, is this what you want? And of course you want to prove it to people because you made a decision and you don't want to make it sound like you didn't know what you were doing. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. You know,
all in. So did the two of you then move in together? I assume if you were not kissing beforehand, you definitely weren't living together. So tell us how that bit all unfolded.
Yeah. So, at that stage, we were both students, and so his family had a large property and had a granny flat on that. So that's when we first moved in together. We just fumbled our way through that period of life together. Like, there was no systemizing finances or like discussing, you know, how do we maintain a household. We just did stuff and existed, and that's as far as it went. Like, there was no sense of thriving. There was no sense of connection. Like, our wedding night, like I remember the next day we just went to like a local beachside area, just rented a house because we had to go back to uni like that following week. So we're like, all right, we'll just go get away. The next morning he got up, went out to grab us some breakfast and stuff. And I just remember laying in bed crying, just thinking, what have I done? Great. Cool. No worries. How do we make this work? So, we just coexisted in each other's worlds pretty much.
So how long was it until you went, okay, I've changed my mind about this forever thing, I'm out?
Yeah. So I remember pretty much a year after we got married, I was having dinner with a friend, and she said, are you happy? And it was the first time anyone's actually asked me that. And I just looked at her and I didn't know what to say, and I said, no. And she's like, okay. I was like, yeah, I'm just not happy. I think it was from then that I realized, like, saying it out loud and sharing it not with only another person but myself was sort of like, okay, like, let's be real here. Like, it's the first time you've been real with yourself. You've identified this yucky feeling you've been carrying for this past year and beyond. It was the sense of shame of even considering divorce, which kept me just going each year. So, and it'd almost be like a year refresher. So towards the end of the year, you sort of get this weighted feeling of like, okay, like, I'm going to come home today and I'm going to say, let's go our separate ways. And every time you'd rock up home and like, because he's just a normal guy, like very like not abusive or no coercion. It was just didn't connect. Like, there's nothing there, barely even a friendship. Like, you still care about them because they're a person, but there was just nothing there. So you get home and like psyching yourself up to say what you need to say and how you're going to say it, and he's just sitting there watching TV saying, oh, hey, how's it going? And you're like, can you just do something that pisses me off so I can just start this conversation? But it would never happen because we're not the type of people to lean into confrontation or anything like that. So none of us ever confronted the elephant in the room. So it took a good 4 years of spiraling into depression, anxiety, to sort of realize, like, I knew what I had to do. Like, I was so unhappy with my life that I knew what I had to do. I went and saw a psychologist, and I knew before going into those sessions, I knew what I had to do was to end that relationship that I felt very trapped in.
And that probably leads us to how you've started pursuing your own psychology degree.
Yeah, so what's inspired me to do that is all the lived experience I've had, all those strange feelings that you've had in the duration of your marriage. Like, you gaslight yourself into convincing yourself that this is where you have to be now, and that this is what things look like, and thinking this is just what marriage is. Like, there's no long happy marriages. Like, people get sick of each other after a while, and that's just the way it is. And just denying myself of even considering that you can have a happy, thriving marriage where you actually look forward to coming home to seeing that person and you're excited to spend time with them. Like, I remember driving home just from work, and I'd be thinking, what would happen if I crashed into this tree? Like, then we just wouldn't have to deal with this divorce. Like, I just be easier. And of course, those are really messed up thoughts, but they were real. And I've had conversations now with people who've had a similar path to me. Like, you enter a relationship or a marriage and then realize it's not the right one for you, and all that emotional turmoil that comes with it. And connecting with people on those like deep, dark type of levels and realizing, okay, like, this is maybe more part of the human experience than we realize. And that the conversations are so strong and so helpful. And that's the type of stuff that helped me get through this strange transition period of getting out of marriage and taking interest in psychology. So, it's pretty much me wanting to be in a position where I can have these conversations with people about the uncomfortable things and realize that even some of the messed up thoughts are normal. Not that they're great to have, but that it is more normal than we think, and it's not taboo. And just being a part of normalizing that dark side and recognizing it and helping other people recognize it.
There's a lot to learn about the human brain and human behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And we're pretty complex creatures. But Kelsey, I want to take you back. So you got married at 18 and you were in that marriage for a few years. So you're like early 20s. And then at some point, I assume you got divorced, not only separated, but then divorced. What was that like for your relationship with yourself? Like, you talked about the depression and the anxiety, feeling like you've trapped yourself into this life that you're really unhappy in. But what did that relationship with yourself go through when you then left that relationship?
It's really strange. So like when you sign the divorce papers, or even before that, having that conversation with the other person, agreeing that you're not going to be together anymore and what that looks like, it's almost a relief, because this is everything you've been thinking about in the lead up to that. But then after that, you don't realize what the aftermath looks like. Like, it's not about missing the other person. It's about not knowing the stability in your own routine anymore, because with a divorce, it doesn't come just with, okay, like, this person's going to be cut out of my life. Your lifestyle is different because you're probably living in a different place. And the idea of what your future looks like now, like, it's just a black hole. It's the abyss now, because there's nothing really mapped out. There's nothing mundane, because you were just looking towards the exit, but you didn't look at what's beyond exiting that relationship. So with that divorce sort of came a big emotional black hole, and no identity, and understanding that I had a lot of self-worth issues and a lot of self-esteem issues. So for a long time, I didn't feel interested at looking into having another relationship, because I didn't feel worthy of anyone else being attracted to me or feeling like it was worth their time being in a relationship with myself. And to be honest, like, I didn't even think I'd even have a chance with anyone, like, who would want me. So it was a big wake-up call, not realizing how much growing I had to do, because most people, if they haven't been married or a long-term relationship in their late teens, they're experiencing dating, what relationships look like if they're long-term or just dating, or a lot of people are experiencing that, whereas I feel like I missed out on that growth period for 4 years because I just locked that shit down and just that was it.
Yeah.
So entering dating for me at 24, 25, I was very emotionally immature and projected a lot of expectations on people. Like, no, like, you just be nice, or you just tell someone you're not interested. Whereas you don't understand that people are in dating situations to either find a partner or for validation. And sometimes you don't understand that there's a lot more to dating than just, oh, we're here to find a partner. Like, sometimes it's to find connection, and people don't even recognize that in themselves. And that's where you get all these really weird dating stories or black grey areas or mixed messages.
Or just misaligned expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're coming in with like almost two different languages trying to communicate, and the expectations are just getting absolutely just misaligned pretty much. But it's definitely been a big wake-up call, and it took me quite a few years to iron out all the things that were embedded in me that I didn't realize that were there. And a lot of it was messy, and a lot of it was a big learning curve that I had to just go through in my 20s, whereas other people at my age were getting sort of settled down after sort of learning a lot about that part of their lives. And how much of your identity is associated with your relationships, whatever type of relationship they are, especially romantic ones where we put so much of ourselves at stake in those types of relationships. But yeah.
So I know that one of the big things that you did was to actually like geographically move yourself out of the environment that you were in.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you packed up your life and what did you do?
So I remember it was a couple of months after I had divorced my ex-husband, and my friend said, I really want to go to Europe. And I thought, I haven't really been able to consider traveling, but maybe I can now. So I thought, okay, sure, let's do it. So I'm so obsessed with financial literacy. So I was like tracking money, doing research, figuring out what things that were going to cost and how to budget. Whereas she was like, oh, I just go to work and have money and spend money and cool, awesome. So I ended up that she wasn't in the position to fund her trip. So I had already committed to flights and like a top deck tour. So I had to just go overseas by myself. Had the best time. It was the best thing for me at the time because you're there and no one else knows you. So you can be a version of whoever you want to be. So, me growing up, conservative little Christian Kelsey, went out to Europe. So like, oh, I can drink.
There's a big wide world out there.
And no one's going to judge me. Okay. And just like you going out having conversations that are meaningful, because what have you got to lose? You either make a good friendship or you don't see those people after 20 days. So it got me out of my shell very quickly, and I loved that feeling so much. And that sense of adventure also is just really inspiring to do things that you don't usually do. Go out of your comfort zone. It was from that sort of ignited, this feeling of like, there's got to be something more. Like, I don't want to go back to home and just sort of not know what I'm doing and fumble through life. Like, it was after that I made a few trips back to Europe, one to America, then went to the UK to sort of start thinking about what it would be like to live over there. And I started to look into the working holiday visa, the one where you go over there for 2 years before you're 30. Then, just decided, you know what, I'm going to move to the UK. At that stage, you can't just go run a wedding photography business over there because that visa doesn't let you run your own business. So I just made the decision to move. I found a teaching agency for like doing teaching assistant work and moved over there having only that to rely on, which was quite sporadic. Like you would wake up every morning watching your phone, seeing if they're going to call you to like give you a job. And it could be like 2 hours away that you have to catch 3 trains and 5 buses, or, one that might be half an hour, but you have to figure out what tube line to get on. So I definitely threw myself in the deep end doing that because it uproots everything, like everything, any sense of security, whether it's financial, your relationships, like support, like, I'm leaving financial stability. I have no one to fall back onto.
No network, no routine.
Yeah, exactly.
No sense of certainty about anything that could happen, which is both terrifying and exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Like I first arrived thinking, oh shit, what have I done? Like what? Like who does this? And then the only choice was to make it work. So I made it work, and I, soon made friends with people at work, which started to establish some security in relationships and people to fall back onto. But there was a lot of healing to do. Like I decided to move over there because I was like, fuck it. Like I just want to move overseas. It's almost like a reset. I don't know what I was looking for, but I think in hindsight, it was a reset. Just sort of, I need to get away from what people
You're very big,
known me
eat,
as.
pray, love.
Yeah.
Life sabbatical.
Yeah. So
quarter life crisis in your 20s.
Absolutely. Like, why not? Like, just get on all the existential crisis.
So what was it like rebuilding, or not? It's not even like rebuilding. It's like creating your sense of self and who you wanted to be in this totally blank canvas of people who didn't know you. You're away from family. I assume you were away from religion as well.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about, like, how did you even start to figure out, like, what you liked or how you wanted to spend your time?
I remember being over in the UK, and this person I became really close with, she was an amazing support. She would ask me to go every Sunday to the swimming pool with her. We'd just go there and chill and chat. And she was just an open book. And she would just have me there crying about myself, like about, there's this person I'm interested in, I'm getting mixed messages, or I don't know what I'm doing with myself, or I'm just now a teaching assistant. Whereas, back home, I had developed a really great reputation in my field of work in wedding photography.
Very talented wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, thank you. I get the best clients only, that's all. They make me look good.
Oh, you're too kind.
Not sprinkly out there. And she was almost giving me a wake-up call, just telling me to just get on with it. And it was at that moment thinking, like, all I've been doing is having pity parties and not understanding myself or where to go, or just expecting to get my self-esteem boost from other people, from like external validation, all that type of thing. So it was then that I just started paying attention to my internal monologue and almost psych-analyzing myself. I'm not too sure if you've heard of this. It's this British guy called Matthew Hussey. He's based in America. And
we love Matthew Hussey.
There was these little videos back in, 2016, 2017, and 2018.
A few million YouTube subscribers.
Oh, my
Just
gosh.
a couple lazy million.
Oh, he's amazing. Like, just the stuff that he had in his videos.
If anyone's not familiar with Matthew Hussey, he's like a modern day no bullshit dating like
Guru.
guide or coach,
Yeah.
or and he just has a very succinct way of explaining things like communication styles and boundaries and expectations, and he helps sort of put some context to, like, hey, dating is a skill. You shouldn't just know how to do this. Like, let's learn together. But he's got a really beautiful way of delivering those kind of messages. And he, as a male, he primarily talks to like a female audience, and he has a really great way of articulating it. So yeah, big fan of him and his work, because he's all about finding meaningful connection through that dating experience.
Bang on. That's bang on. And I remember like my whole dating experience, as soon as like things started to go pear-shaped and all that, and you started to have that internal monologue go like, you're crap, you're not worth this, like, who's going to want you? I would just like lay in bed for 2 hours, just like finding any video I hadn't watched of his, or go back to the ones that I loved that felt like it just hit a bit differently the next time. And I just like clinged onto that guy's videos the whole time.
He was your safety blanket.
Seriously.
Do you know what I think that means, Kelsey? I think that one day you'll get to meet him IRL, and you'll be able to tell him, you got me through a really hard time.
Oh, seriously. Like, when you've had a breakthrough personally, you feel like there should have been like some profound thing that happened, but seriously, it was just me rinsing his videos, getting that like encouragement and having your experience validated. Like, it seriously felt like, is this guy like outside my bedroom window, or just like watching my whole life, and he's just making videos about me? Like, he's like, everything was so applicable and so relevant. And I kind of saw him in real life. In London, he had just a free seminar, and I met some beautiful, like-minded women there.
You went along and fangirled so hard, didn't you?
My goodness, you know it. Oh, it was so funny. Everyone's sitting there, be like, because you guys have seen pictures of him. He looks pretty dreamy. He's
pretty handsome.
He's pretty dreamy. So you get all these women sitting in this room being like, tell me everything you know. Like, fluttering
how do I date you?
Like, maybe we can get inside of his head and figure out what type of woman he needs. Maybe one of us. But yeah, sort of reeling back from that, Matthew Hussey, big game changer. Like, sounds so minuscule, like cool, like take away from this is like watching some person's YouTube videos, but it's finding content that is relevant to you, that just almost gives you, it gives you validation for what you're experiencing.
Yeah. I think also what's interesting about your experience is that you exited a core relationship that you had imagined you were going to do forever, and then you inserted yourself into an environment where you were not legally able to do the thing that you had worked so far to develop your career, your skill set, the thing that you were really good at. So not only was there like loss of identity in your romantic relationship, but there was like loss of identity in your career as well.
Yeah.
And I've been through an experience where I had attached a lot of my my sense of self, my sense of identity to my career, and then left that. And that in itself can be quite a daunting experience. And you seem to be doing both of those at the same time while in a totally different country without a developed network of friends or peers or family. So you just went full deep, and Matthew Hussey got you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much what happened.
So, Kelsey, the other thing I'd like to dive into quickly as well is like, obviously you grew up with a certain set of values, and obviously like yourself and your husband at the time had that same sort of set of values as well. And then leaving that relationship, and I imagine that was probably pretty hard as well, because that was kind of breaking a lot of those values that you sort of had. So how did you go about, I guess, reshaping or even discovering what your new values were like post that marriage?
Yeah, so that marriage gave me it was a big eye-opener. So I was a fully invested Christian, just like, your Protestant type of person. And that marriage kind of broke down all of that for me. So I would probably identify as being agnostic now, which was a big shift for me, because I had built so much of myself in my teenage years, going to youth group, like living by the values that we established as a group, and sort of having that. But I think at that time it's almost like striving for perfection, like being a perfect little Christian young woman, that type of thing. But now it's interesting, because I've carried a lot of those values, but it's just from like just a human connection perspective. So I still uphold like kindness and integrity, which isn't like, stereotypical like, 10 commandment type of style things. But, you meet a lot of Christians and they have, just naturally have those values of like, kindness, they're taking that for them, well, I learned in my experience, sharing Jesus's love and all that type of thing. And for me, it's just now just sharing love. Love can be interpreted in so many different ways for people, depending on what walk of life they've had. So it's, those values have transferred over, but they're now just about me, as opposed to being a part of like a big group that had a lot of structure that you didn't know if you were crossing the line with something or not. Like now it just feels much more organic and free-flowing. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Like I like to give people the benefit of doubt. Like, I'm the type of person who's mostly a peaceful driver. like it's definitely helped me keep perspective on things. So I stop and think about things a lot more, considering, just people are trying to get by in the world.
But that is also a really big breakthrough or shift in your relationship with self, right? Nathan and I both grew up in Christian families with different levels of practicing, and we both went to a private school that was mostly Lutheran, went to Bible studies classes.
Yeah.
And I actively rejected that methodology at about 13, 14.
Yeah.
And I went, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I have many, many questions. Lots of this doesn't make sense to me. And that was hard for my family some of my family to navigate at that time. A very strong-willed teenage girl.
Yeah.
Making her very first very big rebellion to, no.
Yeah.
Whereas Nath probably has had a very different relationship with God, with the church, with his family, and the role that plays in your family life.
Yeah.
But I know that the conversations that Nath and I have had about values, a lot of the time it's been underpinning like, well, where did that value come from?
Yes.
Why is that important to you? And is it actually important to you, or have you been told that it should be important to you.
Yes.
And that's I think that underpinned a lot of our conversations probably in our first year or two of dating was like exploring like, well, why do you believe that? Like, have you actively examined why you believe that? Because I'd been asking myself those questions since I was like, 12, 13, 14-year-old girl. And then Nathan and I are in our like late teens, early 20s having those conversations. And I'd been asking those things for like almost a decade. And Nathan was like, why do I believe that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
he was like, I just grew up with this. I was told once and then came from, a person that their opinion I valued, Yeah.
So what did you do, or what was the process that you took yourself through to sort of unpack some of those values and maybe inspect what were the new ones? What were you replacing them with?
I must say it was not a conscious process. I think I just started to see the world very differently, and I had lived by these rules I've been set by the church and Christianity, and the people I grew up with in church sort of lived by these things. And at that stage, you're sort of being a bit of a sheep at that age as well, especially if there's people in those groups that you put up on a pedestal. What they say sounds great, let's roll with that. I trust what they say, let's roll with that. So to undo all of that and have that wake-up call, it wasn't like I woke up one day thinking, okay, I need to undo all this and like figure out who I am. It was just a byproduct of just experiencing grief and depression, but to stop and recognize what things gave me joy or what things felt good internally, and just paying attention to psychology rather than just values. Like, why do we like the things we like? Why do we actually value the things we value? For me, validation was something that I valued. And, you don't necessarily get that growing up in, going to church and all that. They don't say, chapter so-and-so, verse so-and-so, like, seek validation through X, Y, Z. Like, probably does somewhere, but I'm not aware of it. But for me, it was starting to go, like, tap into my own psychology and taking bits and pieces from anything I was consuming, whereas Matthew Hussey's videos, and then, he'd say a phrase and then make you want to Google it and understand what he meant, like, throwing around words of like cognitive dissonance or intrinsic validation versus extrinsic validation, and sort of go, that totally makes sense. And it was then, but the pure desire to understand myself, that's sort of where I started to learn where my values were. And even now, like, values feels like such a fuzzy buzzword. Like, you say, like, you value integrity. It's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we can value a lot of things. Integrity is nice.
Everyone values integrity until the self-scanner at Woolworths gives you something for free.
Oh, hell yeah.
Everyone values integrity until they're parking in a parking space for 15 minutes longer than what the sign says.
Yep.
Everyone values integrity until the person at the cinema hands them a large popcorn instead of a small.
Yeah.
Like,
Start the car.
Start the car. I think, like, that's when we're really, like, living it, is like, am I truly in integrity even when no one's watching?
Yeah. Like, what are values? Like, what are they? Like, when you say it at the end of the day, like, what are they? Is it something we like? Is it something that we live by regardless of if you're at the checkout, is someone watching you or not? Like, where do we draw that line?
I think Tony Robbins has an interesting take on this, in that what he kind of talks about is that our values are something that we actually, it might not be something that we actually live by right now, but something that we strive to living by.
Yeah.
And so it's actually about, like, Date with Destiny kind of goes through an exercise of basically analyzing your life, working out what you want to value, and then basically making those your core values for the place that you want to get to, as opposed to maybe some of the things that you actually value now. So.
Yeah. I agree with some of that, Nath, but I think that, like anything, things happen either by design or they happen by default. Like the water will either consciously run down the path we've carved out for it, or it will find its own way.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for our values. If we don't ever stop and examine our life and what is it that we're consciously spending our time, our money, and our energy on, then of course it just happens by default. But if we are very intentional and say, the things that I'm going to value are my relationships with my friends, whereas other people might value their career, and then therefore spending 20 extra hours of overtime, that's actually very much in line with their values. So I think that I agree that they don't necessarily exist, but I think they're underlying even if we haven't consciously designed them.
Yeah.
Because I could run through your bank statement and go, well, it's clear to me that you value health, or it's clear to me that you value
coffee,
or you value convenience.
Yeah. Yep.
Or you value your time because you catch an Uber everywhere and you won't get on public transport.
Or appearance.
You really value how your grooming and presentation because you spend money on lashes and tans and hair and all of those kinds of things. Or you really value luxury because you spend money those things. Lots of people really value the postcode that they live in and the lifestyle that provides them. Whereas for other people, they're like, I really value having space or how my home feels, not necessarily how it looks. So I think we need to be careful when we talk about values, because I think they do exist. I think even if you haven't designed them, they exist. So I think this is the difference between you just had all these subconscious values that had come from your environment, from religion, from church group camps and all those kinds of things. And then I feel like you had the opportunity to go, well, hold on a second. If I was to pick them, do I keep these or do I put them back?
Yeah. And sort of figuring out what is worth keeping and what was actually real to me or what was real to someone else, and I just had to go along with it. Yeah. The biggest thing I learned from my life so far is that I'm just that type of person that will go with the flow. If someone makes a decision about something, that's cool. I trust that, or always going by what everyone else is doing or what the norm is, or if someone who's I look up to says something or lives by a certain way, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I've never, or I rarely have taken time to stop and go, what do I want? What does this stuff mean to me? Or am I just going along with it because I've been told to, or feel like I have to go along with it? So it's been a bit of a journey to start getting conscious about my thoughts and about my experiences and about what type of life I want to live.
That kind of leads us to our last question, is what are you consciously doing now? What are the habits, the practices, the routines and rituals that you have to take care of your relationship with yourself now?
I think with myself, a lot of my self-worth came into my appearance, which I feel like so many, if not most people, struggle with. There's always something to pick apart versus something to embrace and appreciate. We're always looking at trying to figure out what we need to work on or improve, and it's not coming from a place of wanting to nurture that. It's wanting to change it because you're disgusted with it. So it's now, I don't know, maybe it's because of the age I'm in now. You enter your 30s having a different lens. You're sort of finding your feet, figuring out, okay, I've got a bit more of a clear direction of what this life thing looks like. I look at the last 10 years and think about all the things that I've wanted to achieve or become or whatever that looks like, and, feeling like there must be this euphoric plane that you hit in life where you just follow this joy ride for the rest of your life. But it's not that. Everything's mundane, but you need to find the beauty and appreciation in the mundane things. Maybe this is all life is supposed to be, is this, little thing that has peaks and troughs amongst it, and appreciating those for what they are and enjoying those really high highs and, noticing those low lows, but knowing that they aren't going to exist forever. So I think in a roundabout way is becoming more attuned to myself, paying attention to my thought processes, and being educated enough now to recognize some of these thoughts aren't actually reality. It could just be your experience in that moment, your headspace. And your hormones. Oh my gosh, the amount I've learned about hormones. I'm enslaved to them. And everything makes sense once your period comes. Like if you're feeling really angry for like 2 or 3 days, or why you're like ravenous for like some really obscure like food group or combination. But yeah,
we could do a whole episode on that.
Oh my gosh,
I think we need to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
And getting more conscious about tracking periods has been a bit of a game changer for us too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine like my partner's now getting pretty attuned to like not taking anything seriously when I get stroppy. Like I'm pretty cruisy by default, but if I get stroppy, there's a reason. And usually 2 days later, we find out there is a reason. But yeah, it's sort of to answer your question about, that self-care type of thing, like what I'm doing to keep myself on track, how to look after myself, is just becoming more self-aware. And how I've become self-aware is by just consuming information, be through people presenting things in YouTube videos, thank you, Matthew Hussey, or having conversations with people and realizing that you are much more normal than you think. And just getting that validation from those connections, like it's been simple but life-changing for me. So now it's just being aware of like, you don't have to exercise to like punish yourself because you're disgusted with your body. You do it because in 10 years' time, that thing that you can do now, you might not be able to do, because if you don't look after your body now, what's your life going to look like? So I learned that having a knee reconstruction, like simple, like putting on a pair of pants was impossible for 3 weeks. And it's a wake-up call thinking, okay, like let's not make changes to my health for aesthetics anymore, which was my problem for most of my life in my teens, early 20s. It's now like, okay, like this is my body. I accept it. And I also accept that there's going to be times I'm horrified by it, disgusted by it, unhappy with it. It's just being part of human. But it's now making the focus on the bigger picture. It's like, I just want to get through this life and make the most of it now.
And able to put my pants on every day.
Put my pants on. I just want to put my pants on. That's all I want out of life.
Kelsey, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your journey. And right at the end there, you alluded that you are in a relationship now. And we've seen your googly eyes when you talk about your partner. So please tell us the 1 minute love story.
No worries. 1 minute. Okay, so...
Maybe 2.
Yeah, cool. No, I love a tangent and I'm so aware of it. So picture Kelsey 2 years ago, high as a kite after having a knee reconstruction, having a little scroll through Hinge, seeing a very cute boy, had a very nice smile. I gave it a little tap and that was that, because I usually let people like my profile and then I sift through that. Takes a little hurdle out of it. It's good. But this time it was probably like the first person that was like, actually, I'm going to like you. Got out of your comfort zone, feel like a little bit vulnerable by stepping into that space, probably not expecting a response. Anyway, he liked me and I thought, okay, I'll create a little conversation asking, hey, how's your night going? And then it just kind of went
really
from there.
Smooth, Kelsey.
Oh, so smooth. Like, that is a great pickup line. Like, it's original as. So, yeah, we go back and forward, conversation, and then 2 weeks later, we go on our first date after I kept kind of sprinkling hints out there. And I rocked up to our date at a pub with a full leg brace with crutches.
Sexy.
It was so great. But because it was like so raw and organic, like we connected on that he's a motorcyclist, so he's had plenty of surgeries coming off. So he was teaching me how to use crutches and all that. So it was a really great way to have a first date because it was so raw. Like you like, this is the best face you're getting is me in crutches and a leg brace.
This is the
like,
best I got right now.
Yeah. This is hot. So yeah, we just connected so well. So it just got comfortable really quickly. Of course, you get like that butterfly feeling, that you found love type of thing, and just getting excited to get to know each other. But there was like this sense of calm amongst it, which was very different from any other dating scenarios I've had. Any relationship scenarios I've had have had this massive element of anxiety, just waiting for like this good vibe never lasts forever, so when's it going to come? And it just never came. And for a while, I did start feeling a bit unsure
Did you
about
start
why I
getting
felt
anxious
calm.
about not being anxious?
Yeah, I was like, nah, like, this is too easy. Like, when's it? No, this doesn't happen.
Suspicious.
And, yeah, fast forward 2 years, we've, bought a block of land together and, planning kids.
Talking about the future.
Yeah, planning our future. And we are such a great balance. Like, I am a massive go-getter and he is just such a cruisy person. Like, I barely see him in a bad mood unless his favourite footy team's losing. And it's just what it is. Like, he absorbs – absorb is probably the wrong word when I'm about to say he absorbs bad moods that I have. He isn't reactive to it. He's just gives me what I need at that time. Usually it's just a hug or a little bit of validation. Like, he doesn't fight back. He doesn't say, why are you like this or that, or pick me to pieces. He just loves me through it and we just move on with it. So there's no volatility in the relationship and we've both acknowledged that and we haven't experienced that before. So it's a really healthy, balanced place. And it's a good place to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So are there any habits or rituals that you've got in this relationship that help keep it fueled up?
I think it's just acknowledging the little things. So for us, it could be, thanks so much for paying that bill today. Just like acknowledging it instead of just expecting it. Even just like, thanks so much for coming with me to I do random photography jobs and one I had to do 3 hours away on the weekend and he came with me. He could have spent his weekend at home watching sport or doing whatever he felt like, but he chose to come with me. And it's just like stopping and like taking the time to thank that person, because once you're in a relationship, everything just kind of feels like a blurry expectation because you're in a relationship. As like stopping and treating them like you met them 3 times and still, being polite, still acknowledging things that you usually would when you're still getting to know someone. Treating him like he's a person who like deserves recognition for the little things, because also it's a benefit for you personally, because like I know when I receive good feedback, I'm going to do that same thing again because I felt really good to get that feedback. So yeah, it's just little things like, and just communicating. It's such a buzzword again, like everything can be just, especially with TikTok and Instagram, there's so much therapeutic stuff out there with buzzwords and all that, but communication, just like saying, hey, I want to do this. Like, what does that look like for you? Opening a conversation as opposed to just telling what something should be like, is sort of asking what the other person thinks of that opinion and how that fits with them. So, yeah.
So the big question, will you get married again?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I see nothing wrong with marriage. It's all about the person that you're marrying. And, marriage is a beautiful thing. It just needs to be treated in a healthy manner. And that's completely up to the 2 individuals entering that. Like, a long-term relationship versus a marriage, the difference is a piece of paper, but it's about what you make it as well. And for me, recognizing and celebrating our relationship and declaring that to people is just, that's beautiful to me, because it's like telling everyone that you, especially I think about it for the second time round, is kind of like dragging my partner up and being like, this is the one, guys. Like, this is the one we're going to do all the life stuff with. And having like the amount of feedback that I've received from people who I've just gotten to know over the last few years, or people have known me through like the ins and outs of like what relationships I've had. I've never had so many people say, you guys are so good together. Like, you are happy. So people see it.
I'm excited for you. The wedding photographer gets married.
Yes, finally.
It'll be
One
exciting.
day.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of cool things to come in your future for sure.
Yeah.
Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us and like opening the lid on your experiences and some of the realizations that you've had about yourself and relationships and the way that you want to do life. To say thank you, we have given access to a school uniform to a student in Cambodia. The cool thing is that this unlocks education. So education is free in Cambodia, but the parents or the family need to provide the uniform, and there's often barriers to doing that. So we've been able to do that via our partnership with Buy One, Give One.
That is amazing. And I love that you guys do this. So good. Love it.
Yeah, we really genuinely believe that better relationships will equal a better world. So with every episode, we love to help, people that we'll never meet, just like some of our listeners that we'll never meet them. So thank you so much for making that possible.
I love that. Thank you.
No worries. So Kelsey, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about your journey so far, how can they do that?
Yeah, so no, I don't have a website anymore with wedding photography, but I do have an Instagram page, and the handle is here.is.kelsey. So come find me if you want to follow my mum.
Slide into your DMs.
Slide into my DMs. Talk about life.
That's
Kelsey, thank you so much. And I know Nathan and I look forward to seeing your love story unfold.
Thank you, and love you guys to bits. You're brilliant, and I love that you're doing this.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.